And so as we're going through the artwork, the husband walks in and she's like, "Oh, here's the calligraphy piece from your grandfather from when he retired, and where do you want to hang it?" And he's like, "Oh, is that what that is? I didn't know what it was." And she's like, "So do you want it? Like, is this important to you?" And he's like, "No, we can get rid of it." And she's just like, "Oh," she's like, "the stories we tell ourselves." She's like, "I had
Right.
it so worked up that this was something that was so precious. I had to keep it bubble wrapped. I had
Right.
to keep it safe." And he was indifferent to it, and so he didn't need it in his space. So under really understanding the value of the item, whether it's sentimental, whether it's the aesthetic
Monetary.
love, the
Yeah.
monetary value of it, and is that value worth displaying in your home?
Yeah.
Welcome to Reframe and Reclaim. We are Courtney Huckabee, a psychotherapist,
And Jen Harris, an interior designer who have teamed up
to reflect,
challenge,
and reframe your mindset in relationship with your personal belongings.
join us as we discuss and declutter all of the stuff that keeps us stuck.
Learn to intentionally create environments with improved function and design that cultivate peace of mind. Find the reframe.
Start your reclaim.
Hi, welcome to Reframe and Reclaim. I'm Courtney Huckabee.
And I'm Jen Harris.
Today we're going to be talking about our 7-step process.
Yes.
So today is the E, evaluate stage, and this comes after the R, reflect stage. So this is where the action starts.
Yes, which I'm a very action-oriented person, so this is one of my favorite steps.
Yes, I'm a very thoughtful person, so I love the reflect because it gives us that roadmap. And this is where Jen really shines in a lot of our case studies, our clients that we've worked with. So, Jen, tell us about the E, evaluate. Where do we start?
You got to pick a place to start, right? And sometimes that's what's most overwhelming, right? Is where to start. But really, what you want to do is get your containers ready, right? Get your donate box, get your trash bag. If there's anything you're going to want to sell, you want to make a spot to put the items you're going to sell, and the spot you're going to keep your items. And so, evaluate is the step where you're really honest with yourself of how this item fits into the space that you reflected about in the previous step. So now that I know what my vision is and what I want, how does this item fit into that space?
Pardon me. And so, with this, we're always keeping that first step. How do I see this space? What do I want for this space? What is this space hoping to feel like? How do I want this space to function? So, as we're looking at each item in our space, we're going to be thinking about that.
Yes. And so, one example, I'll walk you through one of our case studies we did. So, one client, she was going through all of the artwork for her family's home. She had a couple boxes she had moved from home to home and never really hung them up, never really settled because they had moved frequently. And now she was in a home that she knew she was going to be staying in. They had the furniture positioned where they wanted, and now it was the final step to get the artwork on the wall. So by this point, she had figured out this is the aesthetic I'm looking for in this room, and this is how I want it to feel and function. So then, as she's going through the artwork, she has a renewed goal of and vision of does this fit into the space. And so there were some items where she had it hanging at her office, but her lifestyle now is as a stay-at-home mom, and so she didn't need this item anymore, and she was able to easily let it go. Another item was this earth-toned desert scape that, and what she was going more towards was a beachy kind of nautical aesthetic, but still that it's just real comfortable and laid back. And so this color scheme wasn't working in the room that she had wanted it to be used in anymore. And so that was able to be put into another place where it can still be viewed and loved, but it didn't flow with the current space and what she had wanted. Another item was just the size of it. Like she had this really long piece of artwork that we found fit perfectly in an alcove as you walk into her home, and it was a quote that she had used at her wedding and like had her wedding dates on it, so it was a really nice welcoming item into her space. So really thinking about what you want and where things can fit.
I
So,
love that. And I think it's so important that you talk about this client specifically because this client had moved and collected things. And so every home had a different layout, maybe a
yes.
different amount of space to put those decorations or artwork up. So as she's, kind of in this space of settling into this space is going to function and feel different than her past home.
For sure. And one thing with her new space, there was a lot more windows in the living room area. So where she had previously hung her family photos, there wasn't wall space for that. But what it did have was this alcove in the hallway where she could make a family gallery. So as we're going through, she had already had some ideas of what she had wanted, but as we worked through her boxes, she found all this amazing old artwork and things that her family members had crafted or embroidered. And so instead of making it just family photos, we were able to make it like a family art gallery and photo wall. So we have now a painting that the husband's grandmother had done, and there was an embroidered piece from another grandparent. And so it gives this much needed layered look to the space. It adds texture, it adds to the story of the space. And what's really nice is that when we left it, it showcased both sides of the family, so the kids could see the maternal and the paternal sides, and just get those creative juices flowing. It's like, this is where I came from and I have this in me as well. And so that was a really cool process. And one of the questions we ask ourselves is reimagining how the space functions. So the client, when she originally saw this gallery wall, she had in mind that it was just going to be family photos and fill it with that.
Right.
And now that it was reimagined with these items that we had found that were hidden in boxes from Move After Move, she fell in love with this idea and now loves how the space feels. It feels much more familial to her and feels more personal. So I loved that.
Yes, definitely. And again, each space, so it may be your closet space, it may be your kitchen, it may be a drawer that's in your guest room or something like that. The space can be as big or as small as you need it to be, but one thing we really want to stray away from is my whole home. That can be very overwhelming, or my whole office space. If like I have a business, each of my offices have a unique kind of feel. That it is the aesthetic of nature and earth, but it's all going to be a little different and personalized.
Yes. And so one of the other things that was funny that happened with this client is, one thing with evaluate is the value you place on the item.
Right.
So there was an item that she had bubble wrapped and transferred from home to home. And it was like, oh, this is really important to my husband and I've got to keep it safe. And we got to showcase it in a place where he's really going to see it and enjoy it. And so as we're going through the artwork, the husband walks in and she's like, oh, here's the calligraphy piece from your grandfather from when he retired. And where do you want to hang it? And he's like, oh, is that what that is? I didn't know what it was. And she's like, so do you want it? Like, is this important to you? And he's like, no, we can get rid of it. And she's just like, oh, she's like, the stories we tell ourselves. She's like, I had it so worked up that this was something that was so precious. I had to keep it bubble wrapped. I had to keep it safe. And he was indifferent to it. And so he didn't need it in his space. So really understanding the value of the item, whether it's sentimental, whether it's the aesthetic love, the monetary value of it, and is that value worth displaying in your home?
Yeah. And I think that's a great thing to talk about is it's not just usually your own self, unless you are, a single adult living the wonderful life chapter, enjoy it. But if you have a roommate or if you have a partner or if you have children, if you're sharing space with somebody else, that communication is so important.
Yes.
I know that whenever I was in my roommate era, Jen and I were actually roommates, we had to talk about the space and how the space was used and expectations in the space and the decoration of the space and how we were able to work together, live together, and also have the space function for what we needed. So if you have a
100%.
partner or if you have a child, my child has overtaken our, breakfast nook, and that's his play space. But we wanted that so that he could play in a space that, if I was cooking or if, we were doing laundry or something, it was in a common area and it wouldn't be overtaking the living room or overtaking another space in our home. But we felt comfortable with that and reimagining that function of that in that life chapter.
Yes. And some of the things to kind of ask yourself. So let's say you're going through your coffee mugs, everybody has so many coffee mugs.
Coffee's great. Tea is great.
Well, let's say you've decided you want to declutter your coffee mugs. So you're pulling them out. Think about things to ask yourself. How many do I really need and will I use before they're washed again? How many people will I have over to share coffee with? And so how many mugs will I need at once? As I'm going through, why am I keeping this item? Is it sentimental? Does it bring up a memory? Is it the shape of it? I really like how it keeps my coffee warm, or all those things that go into it. But if you're as you're picking it up and deciding, like, do I keep this, do I not, what is your gut reaction? So whenever you pick it up, is it, oh, I have to have this, or is it, nah? Because if it's, oh, I have to have this, and you already have 10 mugs of, oh, I have to have this, then make space and add value to your allotted shelf and only keep those mugs that you hold the highest value in. And then every time you open your door or your cabinet, you're going to be so excited because you love every mug that's in there.
Yeah. And I love how you talk about, in this evaluate process, we've already reflected, we've thought about what we want the space to feel like, how we want it to function, maybe a reimagined whatever. We need to really take everything out.
Yes.
We need to touch everything and see everything, because if I just say, oh, I've got 20 coffee mugs, but I'm only going to touch these 3 that I think I don't need or want, it's really hard to really truly reimagine or function that space in a way that's going to be helpful for you in the long run.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
So I can think of one of our clients who we were looking at a whole room that she was using for storage. And in her mind, there were some things that she was storing, but a lot of it belonged to her then ex-husband. And we were trying to, help him reclaim all of his things, her reclaim her space, and just really see how this space could be used differently. It was a beautiful, large room that was used as a music room in the past and had become a storage room and just a place that you didn't visit much. And so it was almost like a wasted space of not being able to be utilized other than storing.
Yes.
So as we were going through the reclaim process, we interviewed her in the beginning and we interviewed her at the end. She was like, we did a whole lot more than I thought. I thought we were just like getting stuff out and like, there's a little extra space, but we really went through like these closets in this room. We went through the boxes and every item, and she found, she loves that aesthetic design. She loves repurposing things. She loves DIY projects.
And her aesthetic was boho grandma, which was fun to play with.
So fun. I know. I loved that room. But as we were going through things, she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't remember I had so many of these, or I don't need as much, or I bought it because it was a good deal. And so she's remembering like the reasoning behind acquiring these in the beginning, but as she's in this current life chapter, she had put things so far away and stored them away, she didn't realize how much of all of this she had. So she was able to also look at her things and say, I love these glass vases, but I only want to keep these 12 instead of having these, however many she had. Or this one box I will keep for, picture frames and things as I start to design the decor in this space, instead of these 4 or 5 boxes that she had. So again, bringing everything out is a part of the evaluation process. It's not evaluating this item, it's evaluating this space. And so it is a little bit more work, but I promise you, the more work you put into thinking about the reflect, the more actual work you put into actually taking things out, touching each item, evaluating each piece, the more the whole process is really going to have a better outcome for you, what you need in your space in the long run.
100%. Yeah. And another thing to think about too, we don't like to use this a lot because a lot of people get stuck in the maybe or the like, that space in between, that purgatory, that decision purgatory.
Yes.
But every once in a while, like it is good to bring out like a maybe box, especially in really big projects. And so if you're unsure, put it in the maybe box and then see what your physical boundary is. After you have picked the items that you want, is there any more space to put in these maybe items? And usually there's not, because we find what we really want in the space. Another option is box it up. I know other organizers have used this. Box it up and put it away for 6 months and then come back and say, do I need this?
Right.
Or, just having that mental note of touching it, it's there. When you come back in 6 months, even if you don't box it away, you can say, oh, I touched this last January and I haven't used it. So now I feel secure, where before I was like, I don't know if I can get rid of it. I'm secure in my decision because I know I'm not using it.
And I love that too. We actually did use this with one of our case studies, specifically the one with the curio cabinet.
Yes.
She had a lot of things. And so what we did is, what do I definitely want to keep is important and a priority for me? What are some things that I'm not so sure of? And as we started to look at all those items, we were able to repurpose some of those for like using instead of displaying. But also, if you're able to do that and say, I'm going to keep these things, just not have them in this space the way they are now, then not only am I thinking of the reimagined space, it allows me also to sit in the reimagined space and see how that feels, rather than the fear of, I don't want to change, or I don't like that change, or I'm not sure how I will feel with that change. It allows you to actually practice what my vision is and to see how that fits.
Have you found in your practice that because for me, I always notice that, evolution is much easier than revolution, right? Like small steps are much easier to achieve than just a big change.
Always.
So have you found that works in clients too with other aspects?
Yeah. And I mean, myself too. And so me being a psychotherapist, I work with families, I work with individuals, I work with adults, I work with teens and kids, and you're working with the system. That's why we always talk about talk with your system, work with your system, whatever that is. But the idea of, hey, let's take everything and change my life. Let's just flip it upside down. I think that creates so much anxiety and stress and overwhelm with the uncertainty. And, there are people who have relocated in my practice that I work with, people who had like changes in their career, people who have had, brought a new child into their home. And so that is a new step. But I always say, when my clients leave me, if any of my clients are watching this, you'll be familiar with this. What's something you can do this week to help you get to where you're wanting to go? And even if it's thinking about it, or even if it's noticing something, or even if it's trying something once or twice, or taking a step, little progress is better than no progress. And I think all those small steps add up to a new path, add up to success in your life, add up to accomplishment or productivity. But you don't want to overwhelm yourself, burn yourself out, or overstress yourself with, I've got to do all or nothing. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck.
Yes.
It's all got to be perfect or nothing changes. I've got to do all of this work or none of it was useful or helpful. And so with these 7 steps, each step is so important, and each step is vital to the ultimate outcome of reclaiming your space. But also, this really comes from your peace of mind. Like, I feel good in this space. This space works for me, instead of just settling for what it is.
I love that. What can I do today to help get me closer to my goal? Or what can I do this week?
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, and I do think those small things don't feel so overwhelming. And so that's why we've taken Reframe Your Space, Reclaim Your Space, to these really actionable items, and seeing in our book how it looks and how it works with different clients in our book. This 7-step process is not identical in every client we've worked with.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And the purpose of this is, from my background, is I can't say this is going to help you, this is the right answer, this is the quick fix, because every person has different needs.
Yes.
Every home has different function. You have different space. You have different systems or people in your space. And so I love that our book is about you. And these are just concepts and questions and ideas to put into practice that help you figure out what you need and what works for you.
100%. Yeah. I love that. And one thing too, I have found for myself is and with other clients too, is if I'm feeling a lot of anxiety about an item, then maybe that's my body telling me you're just not ready to address this, or you're just not ready to deal with this item. So move to something that you can work through. Move to another item.
And keep that item.
Yes.
Don't let go of something because I should or I'm supposed to. Those words we don't allow in my office. I'm like, where do you get the idea of should? Or I'm supposed to do this. Who gave you those words or ideas? If it doesn't feel right to you for whatever reason, don't do that. But I do think, if you're going through this process, and we've talked about how can you do this process wrong, is not actually putting effort into each of these steps. Now, if you go through the 7 steps and you've gotten rid of 2 things, you've made progress. That's a step. But if you think about these 7 steps, you work through these 7 steps, and the room is exactly the same and set up exactly the same and looks and feels exactly the same, then let's talk about what's keeping you stuck.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yes. So again, with the evaluate, so some of the things to keep in mind: evaluate each item and understand the value each item has in the space. How does the space fit aesthetically into the space and the functionality of the space? And, does it belong there? Does it belong in another room? How does the item fit into the space that you have imagined from the reflect step?
Yeah. So if you would like more information about Reframe and Reclaim, you can find our book online at retailers everywhere. There's an ebook, there's a printed physical copy if you want to do some highlighting and note taking, and we have an audiobook coming out very soon.
And one thing we'd love to hear from you in our comments is, like Courtney said, what am I going to do this week to get to this goal? So we'd love to hear from you guys and what you're doing this week to help declutter your space.
Yeah, hope to see from you soon.
Till next time. Bye. Thanks for listening to our podcast. Be on the lookout. We have a new audiobook version of our book, Reframe and Reclaim, coming out soon.